Our U.S. energy policy changed to allow for new nuclear technology to power data centers because there's that much power required to actually run what's expected over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. So what I would look at is how can we support that? There's more need of microgrid. There's more need, again, intelligent devices that can manage these microgrid places, these different types of energies, right? You have renewables coming in from wind or solar. And again, these are only going to be support systems. You still cannot power a data center from a solar panel array. It's great for the support systems. It's great for ESG, but we're looking now at hydrogen. We're looking at natural gas. We're looking at nuclear, as well as battery technology. Let's not forget the support system part. Hi, this is Tanja Lewit of Alternate eSource, and you are watching a Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Welcome, data center friends. I'm Joshua Feinberg from the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast, and I'm thrilled to be welcoming a very special guest here with me today. I'm welcoming Tanja Lewit, who is CEO of Alternate eSource in New Jersey. Tanja, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I'm pretty excited to be here. Been in the industry for a while, so it's certainly dynamic.
For sure. And the particular area within the data center ecosystem that you work in now is more in demand and more front burner than it's ever been in the past. So it's a great time for us to be talking.
Yes, thank you very much for that. It is so true.
So usually the place I like to start with these kinds of interviews is to understand what was the original spark that got you involved in working with digital infrastructure in data centers. Was this something that you went to school with early on? Have you spent your whole career in this space or in an area adjacent to this? Just curious if you could walk me through what it was like to end up in this role with leading Alternate eSource.
It's a very interesting journey, right? Something that you certainly don't expect. So I actually went to school for business and marketing and started the entrepreneurship role very early on. We started panel components and systems. So when I say we, it's very much a family business. I had the concept, engaged head of engineering, who at the time was my husband. And today my son runs panel components and systems, PCNS. So I've always been measuring and monitoring. PCNS is a company that's been around for 2 decades, providing OEM, so all the original equipment manufacturers, metering, transducers, CTs, PTs, all the accessories for effective power measurement. And I left PCNS for a couple of reasons, but more so because I saw a shift in regular BMS, building management systems, the way we're measuring, the way we were looking at power overall. Things were going to network. And what I mean by things, devices, measurements, monitoring. So I started Alternate eSource with the idea of Internet of Things. And even that time, we didn't call it IoT. It was basically the dawn of web-based smart devices that could intelligently collect data and then provide it to you for analysis or for some sort of action or for knowledge. And 7 generations later, it's a completely different solution set because now we can actually help with management of operations and look at power in so many different ways.
It's really interesting too to think about the origins of IoT and how it's impacted building management and in particular in digital infrastructure, because I saw a parallel thing happening in another part of the IT segment probably about 20 years ago. Managed service providers really came about because of some technology changes that Intel and Microsoft were driving forward. Prior to, it was like this idea of Ethernet cards being able to wake up on networks. And that was the beginning of being able to, and as you likely know, managed service providers are a really important segment for colocation, big channel partners. They put a lot of boxes in these facilities. So it's really interesting to see that you saw the need for an IoT ecosystem that would help with sensors and better managing data centers even before there was a name for it.
Oh, absolutely. And what was fascinating about that is that the devices, right, the technology, the intelligence, is just getting better. It's like I look at data, back years ago, we had these very large boxes and now everything's become miniaturized, like mobile technology. I mean, we have these little processors that we carry around in our pocket. So the same thing with these types of intelligent devices, right? So these are little tablets, if you will, little compute devices that are out there gathering the information of the facility, of the room, of the connectivity, who's in the room. Are my thermal conditions correct? Is there a problem with VOCs? Are my support systems operating correctly? And if they're not, I want to know about that immediately. So a lot of what we can do now is, of course, really substantiate compliance. We can know about unexpected events. And today is a perfect example of that. It is the summer solstice, right? It's a very, very hot day in the New York metro area, unusually so. But is it really unusual? Because what we've been tracking with data is that we've had changes in environment in a variety of different ways. So unusual storms that are, I'm going to say, devastating, and they were unexpected. So you always have to be knowing and aware of what is happening, right? Because compliance is key. We have to keep uptime in the digital, infrastructure side. You don't know what you're feeding. It could be an ATM, it could be an airline network, it could be a lot of different facets. We certainly work in a lot of different verticals. We have a lot of NDAs, but the reality is the intelligence of these devices, ready, layered with software that tells you what to do next, is really our future, Joshua, right? I mean, it really is. We don't have a lot of people. We don't have a lot of skill sets that are being brought to fruition to be able to do a lot of this work. So we're looking already at that next level of what does operations look like and how can we engage younger people? How can we get some more women in the industry? Joshua, I've always been one of the only few females in the room, and I'm happy to see it changing, but I'd like to see it changing more. It needs to.
So we think about the next generation. What advice would you give to someone that's entering college, mid-college, and they've heard a little bit about cloud and digital infrastructure, certainly more now than they would have 10 or 20 years ago, because thanks to Jensen Huang and NVIDIA, it seems like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and the Barron's and CNBC, they can't get enough of talk about AI. But what tactical advice would you give to someone that's entering or in college and they're considering this kind of career about what a customer-facing role might look like in product or channel partnerships or marketing or sales or something along those lines?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here. We have a supply chain that is needing good talent, people that can come in and kind of be innovators, people that can, intuitively know what is next from a perspective of needs. I looked at your webinar yesterday, Joshua, and it was very interesting to me because you hit a lot of key points. People are doing all of their research now on their own. There's a lot of touch points to be able to look to see how you could be successful, right? You need to be aware of where your customer is in the cycle, what decisions they need. So, the engaging of being at an advisor, a trusted colleague to be able to collaborate is really what is needed more. And my concern is that social media and the ability to have all of these sort of, videos and games and things like that kind of distracting us. My concern with that, of course, is that we're losing that networking ability, that young people are more, it's easier for them to be in front of a laptop or a tablet or a gaming PC than it is to have a conversation with somebody. So I really think that when I look at that, and then I look also at what technology is providing us as far as the intelligence, what to do and how we can layer that with what to do next, right? We enable with the devices and then we enhance with maybe instructive software, right? We're working on that right now. I think that's really what's going to help bridge that gap, right? And I don't think young people understand that they could be first responders. What I mean by that is they can actually take their talents right now of being able to react quickly to messaging, react quickly to maybe a video. I mean, you can apply that immediately to management of operations. I mean, what does a NOC look like? A network center or a security center? I mean, the days of people sitting in front of monitors, really, it's people are working from home. And if you are receiving any kind of information, some of it might be skewed. So the point is you want to have critical alerting. You want to know what to do when it happens. You want to know what to do next. And I think the best way to engage younger people is, hey, keep your cell phone. We're going to make the technology smart for you so that you can work smarter, not harder. And I think that's really a lot of the benefit of being in the data center space. And there's also supply chain. There's also sales ability as far as being able to, again, be there, be that support person, and and be able to kind of bridge the gaps of what's needed next.
Yeah, definitely for sure is changing the definition of what soft skills look like. Whereas 10 or 20 years ago, if you knew how to use PowerPoint, you were golden. Now it's hard to imagine someone being in any kind of customer facing role that isn't very comfortable doing this, that isn't really comfortable doing presentations to clients, to partners, both on video as well as in person.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's a networking social skill more than anything. And I see that there's a gap with young people. I think that that's part of what we can do. Part of our responsibility is to help with the teammanship and the onboarding and to allow people chances. You can't get a first responder and have someone excited in what they do, helping keeping operations going if you're not engaging them at that personal level. And we can. Again, leveraging technology is going to be our saving grace. And the other part of that is our education, right? So we need to expand our education system. I'm really thrilled because I've heard of some of my data center colleagues who have gone to community schools, who have started some of these data center operations classes. It's almost like a tech class, but think about the larger universities. We have computer science, we have the engineering sciences, the technologies, but we're looking at inside the box. We're not looking at really what's operationally supporting that infrastructure. So we still have a ways to go to be able to get to that education field. And I'm excited about that too. I want to be part of that. I believe that as professionals, we need to give back. And this is my way of giving back, being able to engage certainly with young women. And I see a lot of still gaps, right? I have this poster that we have out in the hallway, and it's be the bridge. And we really need to be that. And I think we need to be that regardless of who we're teaming with, whether it's our customer, whether it's our supplier, and whether it's the team that we're building to be able to be that next successor, right? That's how we all succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of it is role modeling. Part of it is just working harder to make sure to get the word out about these opportunities. And I was having this conversation with someone last week, and it seems like it would be easier to get more balanced diversity in some of the soft skills areas and then use that as a funnel to say, okay, great. We got to the point where it's at least 70-30 or 60-40 now. Now let's go to our sales team or our customer success team and see if any of those want to enter into a career development program to transition into working in operations or cybersecurity or facilities management or something like that. I think there's a lot more creativity, not only with getting more people into the industry, but keeping more of the people in the industry from leaving the industry by offering more lateral and upward opportunities outside of their current role.
Keeping is difficult. I can tell you from the women perspective, we see women coming in and, participating and being part of that teaming and leaving. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And we don't have enough time to go over it all. In fact, I'm really contemplating putting together like a publication that kind of addresses some of these things, because I mean, I've been in the industry for a very long time. I started in power measuring and monitoring, SCADA. We went from there to network and IP devices. And I feel like everything that I've ever done, Joshua, everything I've ever done and learned in my career has come back to this, my own point of singularity, right? where the expertise and the ability to pull these systems together in a better way is just a great benefit to, clients that we work with. Again, operationally speaking, you mentioned it yesterday on your webinar, there's going to be an exponential growth now. We are seeing an exponential drive for more digital infrastructure. So for us to get on the side of being able to take the technology and help with the job would be really the next key step. In fact, I think we should make it fun. I think we should make it more of like a game. Like if you had a Dungeons and Dragon kind of thing, where all of your critical threats, are the dragons, and you need to shoot them down immediately. I think you'd be surprised at how effective we could be, and I think we could make work a little bit more fun. I mean, the reality is, server rooms are not the most exciting places for people to live. So let's let the devices do that for us, and let's actually utilize the technology in the best way. Let's be that bridge right between the technology and people, and really be able to service us better.
It's interesting too, is that when you look at teens and you look at something like Fortnite, clearly someone is going to get creative enough to say that, okay, a lot of the teens are into Fortnite, have a lot of the instincts that would be perfect for cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. They're constantly battling, being super creative, leveling up, and someone at some point will figure out this virtualized. Apple threw in the towel yesterday on their VR device, but I don't think we're done by a long shot with people trying to creatively figure out augmented reality and virtual reality and how it may even have applications in higher education sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and we're going to see that, right? I mean, we're certainly seeing digital twins in construction. We're seeing a lot more of the virtual reality, which kind of makes it fun, sort of like game, makes construction a little bit like a little bit more just different. It's not so boilerplate, right? It's a little bit more dynamic. So we're definitely going to see a lot more of this. We have to. We can't possibly train everybody with the skill sets that we've had for the last 20 years. And the other side of it is making the devices, the actual servers, the actual way we're building, right, in a better way to be more efficient, more operationally friendly. So there's a couple of gaps that I see that we have to do, but certainly we have to leverage the technology. We're on that page for sure.
So when you think about someone that's more mid-career, that maybe you knew from, maybe they worked with you 10, 15 years ago, maybe you used to talk to them at conferences, maybe they worked for a client that you're working with and you bump into them at an event. Like, Tanja, it's great to see that alternate source is doing so well and your career is going so quickly. I'm kind of in a rut and trying to figure out what my next move should be. I'm relatively sure I want to stay within digital infrastructure or data centers, but I don't know what to do. What advice would you give to someone that's more mid-career that's trying to figure things out and get back on track?
I would definitely give them the advice of looking at some of the new power needs that are coming up. So again, if it's somebody that I tripped across from 20 years ago, they would be somehow related with electrical, electronics, power. Power today is changing. We are leveraging renewables. These plans are already on the drawing table. AWS just announced, right, 2 weeks ago that they bought the Salem nuclear plant. The energy policy changed. Our U.S. energy policy changed to allow for new nuclear technology to power data centers, because there's that much power required to actually run what's expected over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. So what I would look at is how can we support that. There's more need of microgrid. There's more need, again, intelligent devices that can manage these microgrid places, these different types of energies, right? You have renewables coming in from wind or solar. And again, these are only going to be support systems. You still cannot power a data center from a solar panel array. It's great for the support systems. It's great for ESG, but we're looking now at hydrogen. We're looking at natural gas. We're looking at nuclear, as well as battery technology. Let's not forget the support system part. So the support system part is just as equally dynamic. A lot of lithium ion, a lot of lithium in the news lately. We're also sitting on lithium here in the United States. So there's a lot of very, I'm going to say, subject matter experts in geology looking in new ways at how we could possibly harness all of these great opportunities as far as being able to create the next new batteries, the next new microgrid to be able to power everything successfully.
Yeah, that's super fascinating, because if you think about at a high level how the data center industry ecosystem and marketplace is divided up, you have like the operators, the colos, and the hyperscalers and wholesale providers and edge and modular. Then you have all the technology companies. Alternate resource for sure is in like that facilities space. And then you have the real estate and construction and some sales and marketing. So even within facilities, you probably would categorize alternate resources energy related, power related, but even that seems to be bringing all different new kinds of ecosystem partners and expertise into the fold to solve the urgency of what we're dealing with in the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, we're trying to get power back, right? So if you think about it, it's great to say I'm AWS and I have the funding to be able to purchase a nuclear plant, but that's not the case in most real world businesses. And what we're seeing is the data hallway, the data room, the network room, that's already now approaching 8 to 10 years old. So we are trying to get KW back, right? We're looking at these spaces. We're doing assessments. I'm a certified DCEP, which is a data center energy practitioner. So we want to go in, we want to look at where we are today, what improvements can be made. And again, it doesn't have to be multi-million dollars of expenditures. It can be simply looking at stranded capacity, looking to see how we might be able to repurpose or replan the existing server racks, utilizing new technologies that are supplemental to the airflow. We're working with someone right now and we just released a new technology. We got third-party testing. And again, the idea is that it's for every man. It's redirecting the airflow at the servers where it is needed. So right now, we have solutions where we can try to repurpose, reuse, and make better the space that's already running. So that's a key point right there. And the second part of that is the stranded capacity. We overbuilt. If you look back 10 years ago, Joshua, we were always overbuilding, redundancy, the service level agreements. If you start looking back at these buildings post-COVID, first of all, a lot of people have left, right? If you look at them, you have a lot of ability to repurpose, reuse, reimagine that space in a better way to kind of get KW back. So we have a lot of good work to do.
Actually had a conversation similar to that with someone that worked for a hyperscaler a couple of weeks ago. And if you think about like Google Cloud and AWS and Microsoft, their data centers that they built 2, 3, 4 years ago, they're ready to decommission and move on because they need a whole separate scale to tackle what's coming next. So in theory, those hyperscale facilities have a tremendous amount of value to colocation providers. So what happens to the current colocation facilities that don't have enough utility power to power what's going to be going forward? I mean, traditionally, you might have said, oh, they get repurposed as office space, but the demand for commercial traditional office space has changed quite dramatically in the last couple of years. Do you see kind of that trickle down happening from a practical perspective? Is your typical client that is using a lot of sensors and building management to get a handle on better operationalizing the data center, is that come into play as well?
Well, I'm going to say, from my perspective, they're not using sensors enough, and they're not using intelligent sensors enough. It's one thing to have a temperature sensor that gives you a temperature, and then you have to then add it to something that's going to be able to read it, and then you have something that's going to be able to threshold it, right? What's the temperature mean? So we're so beyond that, because our devices, again, like little processors, already are calculating what the thresholds are, and they're looking at a combination of temperature, humidity, dew point. So very sophisticated. And why is this important? Because again, we're not there. The devices are. Now we can be better at planning. We are responding to risks right away. And again, Joshua, young people love this stuff. I mean, I remember when I was fearless in college, I wanted to wear that red cape and swoop in. I still do. We are that A team that you call to be able to come in and and do that risk mitigation, right? We come in, we look to see how we can make it more efficient. We want to get your power back. I mean, that's kind of wearing a red cape right there. But what we need to do is get the next gen, doing that, and the next gen feeling great about that. And so we have a ways to go, but technology is the key to be able to get us there for sure.
Shifting gears a little bit more to the tactical part of leading a company like Alternate eSource, when you think about what you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, what consumes most of your time and resources and energy, no pun intended with the energy, but where your heart and soul is, how do you see that changing over the next couple of years, or do you see it changing?
So right now we're very busy with being able, like I said, we're trying to help people get their power back, look at these older legacy spaces, and get more life into them. It's so dynamic right now. I see us resurrecting a lot of the older spaces, using the existing power more. Connected spaces. So I do a lot of distributed IT for companies. Not everything is all in the same geographic location. If we can get more intelligence with the distributed IT, even from a point of perspective of looking at the power, if we have 3 buildings, we may be using a tremendous amount of power resources within those facilities, those buildings, and we may not be utilizing as much as we might be more efficient in another area. So it's almost like if we can start getting into that intelligent cluster mode, where I can look at the overview of the entire landscape and look to see how that could be managed, that would be a really stroke of genius, right? And again, we have AI. Remember, a lot of this growth is because the AI is all around us, right, and growing. So utilizing that, having that machine learning, that's going to be the future for us for sure. And again, I'd like to see repurpose of the multi-tenant. There's a lot of buildings right now that are sitting, and what could we do with that? We could easily convert that into digital infrastructure. We could easily have new storage technologies. There's a lot of capability to build new capacity. It's just being creative. Just being very creative.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.
So it sounds like there's going to continue to be a really strong demand, not only for automation and for making better intelligence out of the data that's coming in, but still the human part of the creativity of figuring out what to do next, until we get to the point where AGI is deciding everything that should be done.
It's kind of a scary thought, isn't it, Joshua? But we still need to have that part of the intelligence factor, right? What should we do next? And then, that has to be kind of sort of done in a process way. I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, look at where we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. It's funny. I saw that you had mentioned hosting con. Very few of us remember hosting con, Joshua. That's way back when, right? When the internet was just being born, and it was kind of the Wild West. I actually really love those days, and really still have amazing relationships back from that time, and a lot of changes, right? Converged infrastructure, hypervisor, new ways of cybersecurity, and we still have a long way to go on the cybersecurity part. So I thought it was interesting in your webinar yesterday, you were talking about sales automation. And I thought, here we are, right? We've had sales automation tools for years. This is great. We should be automating everything, but we're not. You bring up the very human factor of businesses are not using the automation tools that have been in existence. So I'd like to think that on the digital side, we can accelerate the adoption, right? Because we need to. There's really no time, to wait. And I really believe that there's a really a big push for more technology education, kind of at the community college level. That could be very helpful.
That's the most challenging part with all of these transformation projects, whether you're looking at the transformation from a standpoint of marketing and services professionals, looking at the standpoint from IT services professionals, enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management. It's very similar to, I often bring up the Moneyball movie. I don't know if you ever saw it, but there's this scene where Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill at the beginning of the movie, people are asking it's medieval thinking. They think like dinosaurs. They're asking all of the wrong questions. They're thinking about buying players, but they should be buying wins. And in order to buy wins, you have to be buying runs. And we can statistically model this. So instead of buying a $7 million a year player, you find the overlooked that everyone. And then you get to the end of the movie, and then sure enough, the Boston Red Sox are trying to recruit, and they bring up the idea that the reactionary, a lot of the movie was that Brad Pitt's character was fighting the status quo and the establishment to make these changes. There's so much that goes on, regardless of what part of the data center ecosystem you're at. It's having to change the status quo, and what's the urgency. And that's why so much of this has to start from the top, like the CEO level, and making cultural changes.
It does, and we have to really be succinct and have the expeditious action, right? I like to do expeditious action in everything that I do. But this is the point of expeditious action. I mean, we really need to be better at what we're providing as services. We need to be better at what we're providing to bring people even in, right? That the engagement part. There's like two parts of that.
Educating and building trust, and at the same time inspiring change, inspiring action, so people truly understand the why behind these changes.
Yeah, and again, there isn't a lot of it's the gaming part is kind of the glory part, right? When you think about networking, I think a lot of young people look at that and they think, oh, this is great, but they're not understanding the digital infrastructure that comes from behind that. The AI is very interesting too, because people are not even realizing that every task that they're doing and almost every application that you're touching now is already utilizing AI. So there's extra servers somewhere processing this, so
yeah, it's the whole idea that people think that AI has only been in the last 18 or 24 months. Like anyone that's ever used Waze or Google Maps or Netflix or Amazon or gotten a call from the credit card company telling them that there's some fraudulent activity, all of this has been driven for the better part of 10 years by some degree of AI and machine learning. It's just that OpenAI opening up ChatGPT opened up the box for millions or tens of millions of people to have these tools at their disposal.
Absolutely. And it is definitely a Pandora box from the perspective of, okay, now they want it, and now we have to build it.
With that in mind, Tanja, do you have any favorite productivity tools or apps that you use on a regular basis to run alternate eSource that are just really indispensable that you couldn't live without?
So I am an early AI adopter myself. I just want to let you know that I belong to several networking groups for marketing, also for data center, studies, education, and I've been utilizing AI from the very beginning, basically just to assist with content building, assist with some template building. What I really enjoyed as of late is looking at a lot of the prompts. So if you are a writer, then you definitely want to look at some of the SEO optimizers that are out there. If you've never written, you definitely want to look at how to write a book. It can actually guide you to write that book, which is really exciting. I have a family member that's been wanting to write a book and just didn't know how to get around it. And guess what? AI can help you do that. The other thing that I like to do is the classics, which are now laced with AI. So Adobe, I'm trying to think of some of the other graphic tools that I utilize. Microsoft right now, a lot of their products are already introducing AI. And what I found in my own journey of using the AI prompts and chat is that I've done a really good job of educating my little admin on what alternate eSource is, what alternate eSource does, and how we can maybe engage in a better way. Social posting is different for different things, right? If we're looking at putting some expertise, some case study information, that would be great to put on LinkedIn, like this information. But there's a whole other group that looks at fun Facebook, and then there's a whole other group that looks at what's tweeting along Twitter. So the messaging sometimes needs to just be a little bit different. And what's great with AI, I can use all those tools to create any kind of message that I'd like, even a graphic around it. I've had some fun with that.
Yeah, the definition even of what you would care about for digital branding has changed. 5 or 10 years ago, it was a normal thing that you would always be looking up on Google or Bing to see what came up for your for your name, for your company. Now it's a matter of like when someone asks Copilot or Gemini, what does alternate eSource do? Oh, yeah. Who is Tanja Lewit? Like these are all things that you want to be looking at, where it's getting its data. Is it accurate? And do you need to do a chat GPT? Do you need to do some kind of optimization to make sure that when people are going to this as an alternate type of search experience, that if they're finding what you're expecting them to find?
Right. And a lot of times it's interesting where the journey takes you anymore. So, and Google, of course, has changed the algorithms again. So, and this is always the dynamic, right? There's always change. So we can be sure of one thing, Joshua: change. Yep. And that's really what a lot of the when I come back to education again, I think that's one of the basic things that we can tell in any advise students, advise people that are going through the journey of learning is you need to expect change. And I think you need to be able to adopt and be ready for that as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, people started asking me about a year ago, what's going to change with search results pages? And like, do you remember 10 or 15 years ago when you wanted to know a sports score or the weather, you had to click through to a website and get to a page to figure out, did the Yankees, the Giants, the Cardinals, whatever, who won last night, or what the weather was going to be in the city that you're flying to. Nobody clicks through to anything anymore. They're clickless searches. So imagine that happening with nearly everything, and you start to understand what's going to happen with. But what I've been advising in most cases is YouTube is still the second most popular search engine. So take your whole search strategy and make sure that it's not only text optimized, but you're doing video, because a lot of that's going to continue to be a little bit more AI proof to a certain degree, as people will still continue to learn that way. Just recognize that there's some people that have attention spans to watch a 45 minute webinar or podcast, and there's other people that are going to get the 7-minute version. And then for some people that are really ADD, they'll find a 21-second YouTube short or TikTok or something that motivates them to say, oh, this is interesting. And all of these feed-based systems have your number. They know once you've watched 21 seconds of Tanja Lewit explaining what a building management system is, that they're going to keep serving clips from you over and over and over again until eventually they're like, wow, they figured out they don't even need you to follow or subscribe anymore. They know what to keep serving you to maximize your time on platform.
Well, see, now you know my next strategy, right, Joshua? You just nailed it on the head, because I really am going to be doing some more video content talking about exactly this: intelligent sensors, right, that are providing information for you, and then being able to take that next tool set, right, that great software layer, and be able to do that, what's next. And the reason why, so a lot of videos didn't exist on alternates because we have a lot of NDA, so it's not like I can do a video of what I'm doing in this space. So it's really much more educational as far as I can talk about it and I can relate to things. But I really do believe that being able to kind of talk about how we can leverage is going to be the best way of servicing our clients and, you know, future people that want to come into the industry, right? And you're right. I loved your webinar yesterday where you already said, you know, 83% of the time, when you're looking for a solution, when you're looking at what exists as technology, you're already used to doing all of that research. I think you can thank Amazon for that. We're so like used to now, you know, looking for things and researching first. And in a way, I think it's a disservice, right? Because those that pay a lot of money are going to be front and center, and you may not be getting that best technology, certainly from, you know, a perspective of being able to manage operations, right? You know, sometimes the bigger companies that have the biggest funding that can do a lot of these marketing splashes are not necessarily the best tool set that you'll ever buy.
Yeah,
It's usually the opposite.
I think a lot of it's just being hyper focused on who the niche is and what they care about, and going after places where you can be a huge fish in a very small pond of a segment of a few hundred or few thousand or 10,000 or so people that are laser focused on that, as opposed to larger companies that don't necessarily do the hyper segmentation, and they're not interested in placing 300 tiny bets. They're looking on placing huge bets because of priorities that have come down from their boards and the need of how they're organized and capital structure and things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Electrical, mechanical engineering, computer science, right? It's all merging together, right? So here's one of my pet peeves. You were talking about change. The old ways are not working anymore. I do construction bids, right? A lot of times we're doing turnkey deployments. I have an entire team for that. Okay. How is it possible that we are still using old construction codes? How is it possible that the most intelligent devices that can help your operations, measure your efficiency, right, give you some of the best security, is all dumped in a category 16? It's not a mechanical, it's not an electrical, right? It's not a concrete structure. So a lot of the smart technologies, when you're looking at construction in the way we've always done construction, are all bucketed in this subsection called section 16. And again, if you're building a modular, if I'm building and working on an airport, which I might be, I want to see the best technologies to service not only the client, right, but the people that are using the space. So construction has to change. I actually did go on a PEEB once and did a big letter and a document to the head of construction codes, and, you know, try to see if there was any kind of response, and, you know, hey, can we start looking at how we can change some of this coding, because we're doing smart devices and we're doing intelligent HVAC and we're looking at sensors, you know, to help mitigate risk and threshold alert, and we're putting them all in a bucket that no one knows what it is.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
So it sounds like for sure an area where technology, SaaS, platforms, apps can make a difference in helping to better reclassify and better unlock what actually is really there, so you can make more granular decisions.
So maybe young people, if you're out there, we can start working with construction code change. Maybe you can lead that charge. Yeah. but it has to, because we're not providing the best digital transformation or intelligence when we're building things. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, at some point there's if you look at what's happened with the big SaaS and platform companies in the last couple of years, where Google said they were tired of waiting for higher education to change, and they got into creating this whole certificate program, and AWS has created a ton of courses, IBM has created a ton of courses. At some point, this is going to start being a legit competitive threat for traditional higher education if higher education doesn't get on board with similar programs. It's inconceivable to me that there's still only one major university in the US where you can basically get a data center degree. And there's a couple that are trying to get in this even bigger, but how is it you have 5 or 6 primary data center markets and then another 15 or 20 tier 2 markets? How is it that there's not a major program in New York and in DC and San Francisco and in Chicago for getting a bachelor's of science in data center management or something like that?
Exactly.
It has to change.
It has to change. And we're on that, that kind of pushing that change. And hey, maybe AI can help us with that. I don't know.
With developing the curriculum. Yeah.
Definitely. It could help with the content. It could help facilitate and get things, again, that expeditious action, right? So we'd certainly like to think so.
Going from the subject matter interviews to being able to do the editing and repurposing and packaging and chunking up. Yeah, for sure. That's what generative AI is made for. Tanja, do you have any favorite podcasts or YouTube channels or anything like that you tune into on a regular basis to keep your skills sharp? And of those, are there any that you think would be an especially good fit for being on this podcast?
So thank you for saying that. So I'm very much, I followed the AFCOM information. I'm always involved with looking and educating with data center dynamics, some of the information that's coming from the I'd say like the content leadership. I'm happy to say that I partner with some of the leadership. So we're doing some great things behind the scenes to facilitate better operations. I would say those are kind of the things. I appreciate your content. It keeps us relative, and it keeps us understanding that there's tool sets that we're really not using to the best advantage. And I do follow with a marketing group. I'm actually part of a network that's called Game Changers, and it's a group of business entrepreneurs. And we get together and we have some fun, because when you're in a professional environment and we're working with professionals, right? It's very much a B2B. It's a very, very different focus than if we're providing like a B2C, if you're selling a product, like just a consumable product. It's a completely different thing. And data centers in general, everybody that's been working operationally, I mean, we all have that mindset of risk mitigation, of making sure that we're compliant. We are, the servers are precious. They are expensive, but more so, they're running the heartbeat. It's a heartbeat. It's a heartbeat of our digital economy. We kind of have to be cardiologists. At least that's my role at times. Cardiologist to a server. That's fun.
We were just talking about that at a family function a couple of weeks ago, how all the internal medicine doctors over time, because of how insurance changes, have all seemed to become cardiologists, and what's going to be with the role of the general practice, the internal medicine doctor, and
that's another interesting shift. You're absolutely right. And considering that the number one issue with hospitals across the country is wound care. There's more money spent for simple wound care than surgeries. And you wouldn't think so, but it's true.
If you don't measure, you'd never know.
I'm that measuring, monitoring kind of person. Can't get away from it with me. But again, we need to know. We always have to be on that need to know basis.
With the data, Tanja, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing so generously with all the nooks and crannies and insights that institutional knowledge you've picked up in your career working with data centers and mission critical facilities. It's been fantastic. What's the best way for someone to follow what you're working on or learn more about alternate e-sourcing? You active on LinkedIn, or is the website a good place? Or
yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can check out the website. There are some photos there are some imagery that are AI. You can probably see them, but it's fun. It's because we are, that representation. We are that digital technology, but we really are, that real A team that can come in to get power back, right? This is a serious thing. We really need to be looking at management, our operations, right? We've spent the money. I hate to take clients and see them spend more money, millions of dollars. It's not necessary. There's very, very simple approaches that we can do. On the other side, I really am championing. Join me, Joshua, in championing, what we can do to educate the next gen, how we can get them engaged. I keep saying first responders, that role of being able to use your phone, get information from a sensor, know what to do next. That's empowering, right? So we can get there. We can get there. We have to just get the steps in the right order. And again, expeditious action.
There's so much urgency with what you're talking about. So I'm so glad that I was able to shine a spotlight on this today. There definitely is not a really great cause for you meeting with a potential client and saying, I think I'm going to do this next year or in a couple of years.
No.
Like time is for sure not on their side.
Yeah, no. I'm actually trying to push out some POCs right now so that we can test operationally. We already have some active POCs running with a new solution that's basically looking at blowing air a better way. These are great. There's new storage technologies coming out and battery. I'm excited. It'll be coming. We're going to see some new battery technologies that are going to be disruptive. They're all coming. So it's all in the right time. It's an exciting time to be in the space. Certainly wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And hey, we've got a lot of work to do, so it's good.
That's terrific.
It's good being relevant.
That is awesome. Tanja, thanks so much for sharing so generously today. I've been speaking with Tanja Lewit, who is CEO of Alternate eSource in the greater New York City area. Wish you all the best in continuing to grow and help to solve the energy power problems in the mission critical industry.
Thank you so much, Joshua. This has been such a pleasure, an honor. Thank you again.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.